So J.D. Vance, who is a notoriously dishonest guy, and I wouldn't even say dishonest, he's just a chameleon. And if there's one thing we know about a chameleon like old J.D., it's that whenever someone seems to be on the come up, J.D. Vance is always there to switch his stance and pretend like he always was about this. He notably said Donald Trump was literally Hitler, and now he thinks that Donald Trump is literally God. So, it's no shock that suddenly J.D. Vance is now saying, actually, you libtards, no American president has done more for Ukraine than Donald Trump, which is like, holy shit. It's actually pretty impressive. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance stated in a press conference that no American has done more to help Ukraine stand firm than Donald Trump. Journalists asked Vance why the U.S. was rewarding Russia and punishing its best ally in Europe by suspending the deployment of American troops in Poland. Now, J.D. Vance, of course, not addressing the elephant in the room that that Russia is deterred from attacking NATO by the presence of American troops, and that removing American troops from Poland has long been a negotiating point. It's sort of shocking, right? There's no president who's done more to ensure Ukraine stood strong during Russia's invasion than Donald Trump. I swear to God. He says, quote, Obama gave Ukraine blankets, I gave Ukraine javelins, and it's these javelins that have ensured Ukraine maintains its territorial sovereignty. So, yeah, I think it's a very fair criticism to say that Obama, when Russia annexed Crimea, Obama's response was extremely milquetoast. It was extremely weak. I think Obama felt like the U.S. was bogged down in Afghanistan. The U.S. was spending tremendously on its military at that time, and he abandoned the Budapest Memorandum, which is a treaty signed by the United States that pledged to defend Ukraine's territorial integrity. And so I think that is totally fair. But remember, Trump gave Ukraine javelins in 2017, and that was 10 years ago. And in the subsequent 10 years, right, to claim that, it was all about the javelins, that is that pretends Joe Biden didn't exist. The Biden presidency didn't exist. Because again, right, Trump since then, in his second term, remember, has called Zelensky a dictator repeatedly. Right? He also said that Ukraine, it's their fault they got invaded by not negotiating a deal. Of course, a deal referring to surrendering to Putin, since that was the deal Putin was offering. Then, of course, in February 28th, they both had a shouting match at Zelensky, saying he didn't have any cards and that he never expressed sufficient gratitude for the billions of dollars in American aid provided during the Biden era. Right? Trump was also sarcastic about Zelensky's military-style attire. That is, of course, because Zelensky's country is at war, and in solidarity with every other Ukrainian military-age male who has been drafted, who didn't flee the country, he has adopted a military appearance. Obviously, Trump also said that Zelensky disrespected the United States of America in its cherished Oval Office, which is funny. He literally is referring to himself as the United States of America, and that Zelensky is not ready for peace and should come back when he's ready. During a Fox News interview, Trump dismissed Ukraine's battlefield innovations and drone warfare. That was stupid. When asked if the U.S. could integrate Ukrainian tech, Trump said, quote, "We don't need their help in drone defense. We know more about drones than anybody. We have the best drones in the world, actually." Right? Of course, that's not what Dan Driscoll said and not what Marco Rubio said. That's because Trump is just wrong. He just says the dumbest shit, right? Obviously, he seethes and rages, claiming absurdly that the U.S. sent $350 billion to Ukraine. The real number is about half of that over 4 years, representing about 3 cents of every dollar of defense spending that we made in that time. Trump said, quote, "They made a mess out of Ukraine, a total mess. We helped them with Ukraine, and Biden gave them $350 billion, which was insane. It's one of the reasons the war went on." Technically true. Technically true. It's like saying that the reason the boxing match keeps going is because one of the boxers continually fights. Right? And of course, you have no cards, you have no leverage, blah, blah, blah. Well, again, for someone with no cards, and by the way, that's a bunch of statements. That the reality is that U.S. aid to Ukraine has dropped to $0. U.S. has spent $0. They've actually forced the Europeans to pay, at times pay twice, for military equipment purchased by the United States for Ukraine. So this is just absolutely a transparent joke. But what I think the real story is that Vance is out here. Vance always changes stripes when there's a winner. And if Russia ends up defeated, like Orban, right? You notice we haven't heard Trump say a fucking thing about Orban. He literally sent J.D. Vance to campaign for Orban in a domestic election. And now that Orban got his ass kicked, it's like he never existed. And that's what's going to happen. That appears to be the direction things are trending. Russia is having a really tough time. Internally, Russia increasingly sounds like it is going to be selling a mediocre to bad peace deal. Ukraine increasingly looks like its drone tech and its investments in not so much the drones, but the innovation ecosystem that produces these drones is pulling ahead of Russia like tremendously. And this means, of course, that for J.D. Vance, he needs to start backing the winner and distancing himself from the loser. And that is what we're seeing here with these kinds of statements. That's what this comes down to. That's all it is. It's not more complicated than that. Okay, thanks, Syllabus. Considering how prevalent HOAs are in the U.S. now, I don't know how feasible it is for the average guy to run a Donald Trump style scheme. Yeah, probably. But, you know, listen, never discount a schemer, okay? That's what I've learned. Some of these, I've met a lot of guys who are like notorious, like ethically pretty bankrupt hustlers. And there's a lot of hustles that you can make as like a poor person. One of them currently serves in a pretty high capacity in the White House, right? Never, not accusing him of a crime. Never said, just did things that I find ethically dubious. Also, Syllabus, thanks. Obama's mistake was pawning Putin off on Biden and then not trusting Biden's judgment to send lethal aid to Ukraine. What was even the point if Obama didn't want to deal with Putin himself? That's a good point. I think Biden has always been seen as a Atlanticist, someone who really cares about the U.S.-Europe relationship. But you know, I think Biden being like, yo, we have to arm these guys, and Obama being like, I don't really want to. I don't want to antagonize Putin. And it's like, my brother in Christ, Putin is antagonized. Like, what do you think? And by the way, he got a pass in Georgia. People just gave him a free, nobody did diddly to him when he invaded the neighboring country of Georgia. Especially because they invaded Georgia while Georgia's most combat-ready brigade was equipped by the United States and deployed to Iraq. And Georgia turned around and go to America. We came to your defense. And you asked us to. We are here in Iraq. Our troops are here in your war. And we've turned around and our enemy has invaded us, is threatening our homes, our children. And then the U.S. goes, oh, sorry. Ooh, my bad. Yikes, that looks pretty bad. Like, yeah, if you were Vladimir Putin, you're just like, yeah, obviously there is an implicit deal when a superpower says, hey, send us some troops, and then something bad happens to your country because the troops weren't there. There's an implication there, you know? Ace Camps, thanks for the 10. After seeing a previous vid about Russia thinking about surrendering, do you think Ukraine won't accept any peace deal where they're actively retaking land? Why stop when you're on a roll? Exactly. That is the exact Putin calculus. Is to say, listen, now that you're winning and Russia's being kicked out, why would you accept a surrender or a ceasefire or a deal like that, you know? Now, again, it's hard because just rolling back a year of Russian gains would take a long time. And Ukraine probably would fare better saying, hey, like, here's what we really need to retake. I'm fascinated that so much has been about the Donbass. And I actually think that because prior to the invasion, the fighting was localized in still a significant part, right? Luhansk and Donetsk, right here. And I actually think that for Ukraine, the reporting for a lot of this was that the individuals here would routinely report on troop movements, and they were very pro-Russian, right? Particularly because you got to think, when Russia invaded in 2014, the pro-Ukrainian cohort fled. And who stayed? Well, the people who wanted to live under Russia. So I point this out because if you are Ukraine and you say, listen, we're going to retake some of the things that we can, the most retakeable are probably Mariupol and Melitopol. Like, to me, Zaporizhzhia, they may be the most retakeable, so to speak. But it's hard. It's hard because this is the least retakeable terrain because it's very open. And open terrain in drone warfare is a death sentence. But again, you slice this off. But again, to do it, I want to be clear. To do that, you would have to cover more distance than the farthest Ukrainian offensive, or the farthest Russian offensive in like 3 years. You'd have to do like 3 years of Russian work to cover 99 kilometers. But the answer is, if your position is strengthening through combat and the enemy's position is weakening, then you need to keep fighting. That is the Russian incentive. That's true. I mean, this occupied Ukraine represents about 30% of Ukrainian GDP. So this is the equivalent of seizing like the American West Coast, right? It's like seizing California. It's a huge portion of the country's economic activity. Again, central Ukraine, much more agrarian. Again, the Donbass is just so much heavy industry, so much shipping. I mean, look, Berdyansk, Primorsk, like these areas here, Yalta, Mariupol, these are massive shipping hubs, right? And then they pass through Crimea and out into the Black Sea, through the Bosporus, into the Mediterranean, where this can ship, anywhere, right? Where it can ship all over. So that's what's worth pointing out, is that these are major economically valuable areas. I don't know if it's exactly right. Maybe I can find a map. Let's see what states would give us 30% of their GDP. Map U.S. states share of GDP. Thank you, Visual Capitalist. Okay. No, I was spot on. Actually, guys, whoa. This is sort of interesting. Basically, it'd be like taking California, Washington, Oregon. Jesus Christ, this is crazy. Yeah, so that's basically 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. It'd basically be like seizing all of these states. Like the westernmost 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. The westernmost 12 states. But this is actually fascinating because when you look at these stats, indicate pretty clearly that that America, when you look at on a population basis, let's see if we can open this image in a new tab. There we go. Much better. This is telling us that on a population basis, these states that basically exist solely to manipulate the Senate and electoral politics have basically none of the population. They contribute nothing to the American economy. You have to think that the average, right, 50 states, the average is 2%. An average state should contribute up 2% of the GDP. 50 states, 100% GDP. So again, tiny populations, almost meaningless economies. You basically, the country, I mean, if you want to capture most Americans and most economic activity, you basically have California, New York, Texas, Florida, and Illinois, Pennsylvania. That's it. Yeah, and what percentage of GDP is that? 15. We're basically at 25. There's 30, 38 basically. There's 41 or 42 and 45. Yeah. So that's the equivalent of Russia just annexing all of this. Absolutely insane. Okay. I see you guys. Exquisite Soup, thanks for the 5. Should the U.S. military establish an unmanned systems branch like other countries are doing? If it wasn't for Trump, would we be ahead in drone warfare? You know what's interesting? Part of the reason Ukraine leaped ahead in drone warfare is because years ago, when it looked like Trump might be elected, Ukraine adopted a policy called, I think, like self-reliance. And that policy meant that Ukraine had to build an arms industry that it did not depend on American assistance. And that meant finding massive efficiencies, trying to achieve battlefield effects for the cheapest possible cost. And so they said, listen, we can't afford to load up on artillery when at $6,000 a shell. We need to find a way to achieve artillery effects for $400. And that's how they settled on drones. They said we need to achieve the effects of a HIMARS for $500,000 instead of $4 million per shot. And that's how they got the fire point. So again, I think part of the reason Ukraine evolved is just like if your goal was to make a superbug, right? If your goal was to make an unstoppable disease, what would you do? Well, you would continually take small progressive doses of antibiotics, one after the other, until it developed an immunity to all of them, right? You would slowly make the environment more and more hostile, forcing that bacteria to evolve and evolve and evolve and evolve until eventually, again, like a disease in a hospital, right? Jumping from room to room, patient to patient, every time getting treated partially with antibiotics, becoming more and more resistant until eventually you have a super bug. That's how Ukraine's military has evolved, right? Through a progressive, but not system-breaking increase in pressure from both the Russians and from steady declines in U.S. assistance. So I actually think Ukraine is ahead in drone warfare in part because of the terrible, inconsistent, unreliable contributions or lack thereof from the United States. Syllabus. Is it also Ukraine's economic future, 12 trillion in resources? Also, you are right. Georgia got screwed by the West during the invasion. Israel gave Russia shutdown codes to Georgia's drone made by Elbit. I didn't know that. I wonder if that's true. I mean, how many drones was the state of Georgia running in 2008? I didn't see anything about that. And I believe it because if there's one thing that oh, interesting. It looks like there was a lot of Russians shooting down drones, but I don't see any like deactivation or anything like that. Okay, so there were drones, including an Elbit Hermes 450. Okay. Doing like ISR. That's interesting. That is an interesting sort of turn of things, right? Yeah, as many as 7 drones shot down. Huh. Again, interesting. They were all Elbits. Huh. Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah, they talk about seeing the drone flights, but there's nothing about... Oh, interesting. No, emails revealed by Stratfor and leaked by WikiLeaks revealed Georgia believed Israel provided Moscow with data link codes for its drone fleet, allowing Russia to hack them and force them to crash in exchange for Russian intelligence on the Tor M1 systems it had sold to Iran. Wow, interesting. Russia hinted it would sell weapons to Iran if Israel did not stop its military cooperation with Georgia, which it would do in the days before the war. Elbit Systems would sue the Georgia government for its refusal to buy more, and Georgia was made to settle for 35 million USD. Jesus Christ. And Elbit just Georgia manufactured its own line of drones with assistance from the Estonian military company ELI. Interesting. And then he lost, and the new Georgian government restored commercial ties with Elbit. Whoa, that is crazy. Okay, wow. Ace Camps, Jake Bro believes Russia is bound to collapse in the near future. Do you think they face any form of economic or societal collapse? Short answer, no and no. I mean, their economy is going to get worse, but I think what you would have likely is possibly a either coup from Putin, like a coup against Putin, which seems kind of unlikely, either a hard coup or I think possibly a soft coup. The most likely outcome would be a soft coup where the leadership gets together with enough oligarchs, they sort of imprison Putin in a presidential palace, and then they coerce him into voluntarily surrendering power for health reasons to a designated successor who will then end the war. But no, broad economic collapse. Again, I think they're going to enter a recession. I mean, is the Great Recession an economic collapse? Kind of. I think that's very possible. Yeah. Yeah. And Celebris, yeah, it's uncovered way later. Russia exchanged shutdown codes for some old air defense they sold to Iran. Yeah. I mean, like the Israeli fixation on Iran is a little weird. Given that Israel has like nuclear weapons, it's not that weird. I mean, Hamas and Hezbollah are like direct pressing imminent threats. Like I acknowledge that. But a lot of the other shit is kind of weird. And it's, given that like Israel is a nuclear power, it's like I don't really understand it. Okay, do you guys want to look at the absolutely wild DNC autopsy? Because it came out just a few minutes ago. I mean, maybe like 3 or 4 hours ago. And it is pretty stupid. It is, wow, we're so cooked, guys. So, there were basically some rumors that the DNC autopsy, and this, by the way, guys, was done by a major donor, reportedly cost about $400,000, involved sprawling meetings, sprawling discussions with almost everybody involved in 2024. And oh, interesting. Syllabus. The new leader is Bidzina. He's still in power. He's Georgia's shadow leader now. He made billions in Russia and is pro-Moscow. Of course, he's not upset at Elbit. Georgia's in a real rough shape. Oof. I'm sorry to hear that. I actually just took my family to a Georgian restaurant, and we loved it. We had such a good time. Georgian wine is amazing. The Georgian Ishkali, the bread boat, phenomenal, awesome. And the pickled stuff. Like, for reasons I don't really understand, my daughter is obsessed with all pickled food. And so seeing all the different Georgian pickled tomatoes and the pickled like flower buds and the pickled cucumbers and pickled onions and pickled cabbage, she was just like, oh, where'd you find these guys? Khachapuri. Yeah. Okay. So this is the DNC autopsy. Yeah, let's talk about it. Right. And so this was commissioned for very expensive by a major DNC donor. And this is just further proof that like being a billionaire is so much more about luck. Not to say that like I don't believe in like free market capitalism, but like being a super mega donor does not make you super mega smart, because one, what was sent to the DNC was unfinished. So the DNC appears to have never finished it because it looks like they needed a bunch of edits. And one, I'm going to start out by saying the formatting is kind of stupid, but I don't judge that because it's a draft, and right, like formatting and is going to be done by like a public relations committee. Okay. But basically what they seem to be spinning, the DNC is like, this is actually too dumb to release. And if you read this, the intro is pretty stupid. I read the intro. It sounds like college undergrad level analysis. In every election cycle, the two major parties and hundreds of outside groups invest enormous resources and energy trying to define the terrain for voter choice. Duh. What happens at the presidential level certainly impacts down-ballot contests, yet candidates across the ballot in both parties will still seek to define the choices for voters in their specific elections. From these choices, the voters decide which choice is most resonant. Where's the autopsy? One party declares itself the winner, and the other party declares that the fight is far from finished. It even includes like dumb John Adams argued, quote, liberty cannot be preserved without a general knowledge among the people who have a right and a desire to know. The desire to know, to understand what is going on, what is going well and needs to be maintained, along with understanding what is not working and needs to evolve, is at the heart of any substantive effort to evaluate the relative impact of strategies and tactics tied to a specific election cycle. Also, in this regard, the 2024 election was no different from any other. I don't think anybody's going to say that one, okay? So, like, what I want to point out is that they sent the DNC no source material or data and no citing of sources. So they don't know how much is analysis and speculation, how much is data driven, which is really annoying because you collected all of this fucking data and then you sent it to the DNC and then you sent like a write-up. And then the DNC itself turned this unsourced write-up into a series of executive summaries. So you're like, where are the people whose job it is to do the work? It's like the shittiest org chart you've ever seen, where you know how there's like one overworked analyst at the very bottom, and then there's 80 layers of management adding fucking absolutely conducting zero value add. Okay, trust me, I know. I worked in a government office that produced reports, all right? I know how that is. A team of 3 people would do the actual hard work of investigating something, and then legal and language and product and 4 layers of leadership and everybody else would all get to weigh in not on their areas of expertise, but just on any fucking thing they wanted. They didn't know how he came to conclusions. They didn't care. They just wanted to weigh in and say it. So, again, this is how this seems to have sounded. Like, I know that there was a lot of groundwork done, but it seems like nobody ever shared the groundwork with anyone else. It was just a bunch of leadership navel gazing. There's not even an exum. Like, what? Which is hilarious, actually, they claim. Now, bear in mind, some of these notes, these comments, they could be cope. Like, the DNC could be like, well, we don't have sources for this. Well, we don't know. But why would you not say these things? Again, they're like, we have to win anywhere, which we know they're not doing because we talked to the Democratic nominee for Congress in Texas 11th District, and the National Party's nowhere to be found. Like, it's literally her and the neighborhood crew. So we know that this is bullshit. We have to meet the moment with creativity, purpose, and openness. Fucking shoot me, dude. Is this really what passes for running one of the two largest parties in the largest, most powerful democracy on planet Earth? Like, we are the largest economy by far. We fucking built artificial intelligence. We put a man on the moon in the fucking 60s. And this is what passes for our party's ability to do analysis in 2026. Right? The margins says it was decided by 200,000 votes across 4 states that decided the presidency. And it says numbers appear inaccurate based on public data, which is kind of crazy. But let's see if we can actually validate if this is true, right? So let's see. Results. Here we go. So yeah, the difference was 2 million votes, but how many of those were excess votes in swing states, right? Whoa, this is a lot. Okay. Sorting EV, is this the delta? No, electoral votes. Duh, EV. Come on, Paul, get it together. Okay. Sorting by the middlest percentages. So if you're talking about states that like swung it for Trump, I mean, there you go. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. If you argue that these 3 swung the election, then what do you have? Let's see. The delta. This isn't easy. All right. So the delta here was in Wisconsin was 10. Man, doing math is hard. 30,000. The delta here was, say, like 80. And the delta here was, I mean, they're kind of right. They're close. I assume it's these 3. These 3 might not even be necessary. Oh, there we go. Oh, here you go. States where the margin of victory was under 1% was Wisconsin, 30,000. 1 to 5%, another 80, 120, 115. So, like, I guess how close was the Electoral College? Not even close. Okay, so she needed, oh man, so she would have needed basically a 80-point flip. Like an 80-ish point flip. So that means about 40 electoral votes. So she would have needed to have flipped Wisconsin. Yeah, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. So again, not not 270. I don't know where they got that number. So, okay, I believe their comments here. Exquisite Bet Soup. Why is the Democratic Party so incompetent? I think it is because I think the people who are going to work full time for the Democratic Party are not technocrats, they're ideologues. It's the same reason why so many of the people who are like authors of Project 2025 are like creepy extremists, right? You know, the guy's got a gigantic oil painting of a German battleship. Like, brother, you're an American. Like, they're the enemy. It's how you have, you know, the RFK Juniors in charge. It's because at politics, if you're going to dedicate your life to it, you're an ideologue. Like, normies who are like good at organizing. There's also this larger, deeper thing of I think when you have a country that loves money and the pursuit of money and the absence of anything else, where like money, being as rich as possible is just good. Like, there is no moral strata above being rich. Like, being rich is the best thing you can be. And politicians and political staffers and people that work in politics, they don't get rich, but they have an opportunity to make a difference, right? Either, I mean, have power. But if wealth is literally power, then you don't have competent people. You have this like, you have a bunch of people making $46,000 a year. And like at $46,000 a year, you'll get someone who shows up on time and can maybe like read, write, and do simple math. But like, you're not going to get much more than that. And I sound like a hater, but trust me, I got hired in my first job making $46,000 a year out of grad school. And yeah, essentially that's the level that was like you could expect at that salary level. So I think that's what you have. So again, it says a bunch of like not stuff, not real stuff. Then he rehashes 15 elections. We spend easily a bunch of time on retrospectives, which is not really what you want to do as an autopsy. Again, they're like, the sad truth is Democrats have lost ground at every level from inconsistent messaging, improper planning, even as the policies the party advances continue to earn voter support at the ballot box. Ballot measures for Medicaid expansion, nonpartisan redistricting, wage increases, family leave. Okay, this is stupid. Appears to conflate family and sick leave. It doesn't. It's paternity leave. Reproductive freedom have passed in states where Democrats remain locked out of statewide offices. This is so petty. Divergence means the party and our candidates have lost the confidence and trust of voters. Duh. Right? Many of our critical Democratic wins attributed to negative partisanship where Republicans nominate deeply flawed candidates. Right? Again, in the 2020 Georgia Senate, where Republicans nominated Herschel Walker to take on Raphael Warnock, despite a series of false and unverifiable claims by Walker, as well as the near complete absence of a comprehensive policy agenda, endorsements by Trump and Mitch McConnell were enough to take the Senate race to a runoff where neither candidate claimed 50% of the vote in the first round. And then he adds, that took place in 2022 when Joe Biden was president. Now, what I think is interesting is that, advantage, take name recognition, toughing an opposition to pursue an unqualified candidate's job would have been a little more than rubber stamping the president's agenda. Again, like this misses fundamental facts. In 2022, the president would have been Joe Biden. So it would have been rubber stamping the Republican agenda, right? Like, can these people not hire a real think tank? Think tanks, this is exactly the kind of shit think tanks do. So, projected 2030 reapportionment. Dude, this isn't an autopsy. This is a strategy document. What happened? I love this. Intro pending. National review overview pending. Battleground state outcomes. Okay. Yeah. On election night, consistent Democratic states voted for Trump. And they point out all of these states voted for Trump in 2016. This is terrible analysis. Trump won the election, despite winning the popular vote, Trump won the election by a little more than 2 million votes in the popular vote, meaning the election was swayed by 0.15% of the votes cast across the election. That's not what they just said. They just said it wasn't. It was by 200,000 votes, which is also incorrect. Tens of thousands of votes in a handful of states turned a Republican to the White House. Not true. We just said it was 200,000 votes. Which is it? Right? The office for governor was in the ballots in 11 states. Forgot Delaware. Right? Appear to be missing Delaware. This is the kind of thing that, like, you just have zero credibility. This is so badly written. I mean, you can't trust analysis like this. And, like, here's one of the things, guys. As an auditor, one of the core tenets of doing an audit, which is what an autopsy of an event is, an audit. You're auditing the event. You're saying what happened, why did it happen the way it did? And when you have that, you always provide your full sources. Like, down every interview, every document, every claim you make is sourced. I wish I could show you guys, if you were to make a report like this from an IG, subject to auditing standards. I'm using auditing as a government. So there's government auditing standards, the yellow book. There's also something called the blue book, which is for exactly these kinds of events, right? So government auditing is a financial, like finances only. Is the money spent the way it's supposed to be spent? That is subject to GAGAS, right? Best done by a CPA or other accounting professional. But then they said, listen, there's a bunch of other things that aren't money spending per se. They are things like, are immigrants in detention treated properly? Are complaints about law enforcement adjudicated fairly? Are union, I'm using DH examples from my time at Department of Homeland Security. When officers, the rights of officers to join unions and ask for union advocates, are they being respected properly? Right? Those require a different set of standards because you can't treat them like accounting problems. And so they created this thing called the Blue Book. The Blue Book is a set of standards for how you do exactly things like this, where something happens, it has both concrete factual elements like data, but then it also has subjective elements. What did when you said when a migrant in detention medical care, let's say where that's what you're looking at, you're going to say, hey, when did you first notice your tooth was hurting? You'd ask a migrant. And they would say, well, I kind of told the guard my tooth was hurting and they said that I could report it at sick call. And then I say, okay, well, did you report it at sick call? And they go, well, I did, but I said this, I said that. So, I didn't really think it was that big a deal, right? Like there's squishy stuff, but there's a way you can also say, hey, the squishy stuff counts too. And so, but a Blue Book standard report, every one of these would be linked to something. So what you would say is you would highlight, for example, you would say Stein's best performance relative to Harris was in major metro areas, right? And then you would say Raleigh, Wake County, and then you would actually have a little comment here, and you would comment and you would basically link to the source. The source would have a number. You'd be like, see document 157, and 157 would be Raleigh, Wake County results. Or sometimes it's actually a link to a spreadsheet that says Raleigh County results tabulation, and then that spreadsheet would send you back to the original source. It would be, the sourcing would be like 10 out of 10 meticulous. And yeah, that can take a year, but it's been a year, lads, right? But you see, they didn't give them any of the evidence. They didn't show their work, which is so fucking annoying. And again, it says public reporting and data contradicts several underlying assumptions, which isn't necessarily an indicator. But if you obtain data that is not publicly available, you should share that data with the party. And also the party should just say it. Like, it's embarrassing, but like, you know what else is embarrassing? Fucking losing an election. Okay, I see that it's 5. I actually have to go. Yeah. People are like, I'm mad. Let's move on. Bro, I would love to move on. But I see this stuff and it drives me fucking crazy. Right? No evidence, no evidence. Again, I'm like, maybe the evidence is buried here. No methodology. That's fine. No source material. Unsourced claims can't be verified. Yeah, they keep saying the same thing. I wish they would. Right? Conscious public reporting. Trump won Latino men by 12 points. The House. Section. The section not provided by the author. Who was the author? Just random sort of arbitrary claims. And they only assess spending. The only thing they assess is spending. Spending, spending, spending. Nothing about effects. This is so fucking bad. Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button. Check out another video here. And of course, become a member at combatvetnews.com for access to an entire archive of premium videos, including combat footage that YouTube would never let me show you. The link is in the description. And of course, a huge thanks to all of the Combat Vet News members.